Again, I want to thank everyone for joining us today as part of our webinar series. Today we're going to be focusing on finding the right size display for your specific environment. My name is Alessandra Tino, and I am the Educational Specialist here at Truxel CDI, and I am joined by one of our great partners, Stephanie Schomper from LeGrande, and she's really going to be diving into today's topic. Many of you will see on your screen at the moment there is a poll question up, so I'm going to leave it open for about a minute or two more. So please feel free to fill that out, and then we'll turn it off. So I just introduced myself. I have been with CDI for now just for a bit more than a year, working with a lot of our great partners and trying to find out the best solutions that work for the classroom and current trends within the educational technology market. So as some of you may know, we are now the new Truxel CDI. The two organizations merged in July of last year to form the world's largest ed tech solutions provider. Our mission as the new organization is to enable customers to improve learning outcomes by assisting them to build classrooms of tomorrow, but today. The merged company now serves over 70 million students all across North America, with more than a third of districts buy through us to provide a full breadth of EdTech solutions, and we work with over 500 technology partners. In terms of what our offerings include, everything from AV essentials, so projector solutions, audio solutions, digital displays, interactive flat panels, the accessories that come along with it, as well as installation services, our one-to-one learning solutions. So it's everything from the devices that the students are using, the teachers and admins are using. We have trade-in programs, asset and device management as well. Campus safety, collaborative learning spaces, and STEM, which is becoming hugely important with student engagement, as well as we also have a wide variety of our own Truxel CDI services. When it comes to best AV solutions in the classroom, one of the common questions that we do hear from a lot of teachers and district technology coaches is, what is the best solution? Is it a projector? Is it an interactive flat panel? There's so much out there, and obviously technology is constantly changing and improving. So today we have, as I mentioned, Stephanie Schomper with LeGrande, and she's going to dive a bit into the differences between the both and trying to find the best display for your classroom. So I'm just going to pass this on to Stephanie. One thing I do ask, and I'm sorry I forgot to mention this at the beginning there, is that please feel free to ask questions at any time. There is a chat box as well as a Q&A box that we will be monitoring throughout today's session. So please feel free to answer anything in there, and then we'll also have a Q&A question at the end. So Stephanie, I'm going to pass this over to you.
All righty. Let's see if I have some controls on here. I'm trying to go to the next slide. Oh, did I do that or did you do that? All right, so I'm Stephanie with LeGrande, and a few of you may be interested in kind of who LeGrande is. If you see at the bottom of the screen there, it obviously has Chief and Daylight. So we'll kind of dig into who LeGrande is, what they do, but then also kind of focus on one of the big things that we hear in our market is, hey, I have this interactive flat panel, or I have this projection screen. What size do I need? What are the standards? That kind of stuff. So we'll kind of go into some of the standards that AVIXA, who is the organization in the United States, actually and globally, have determined as, hey, this is what you kind of want to start with as a base point when you're going into a classroom or an environment to size the display correctly, whether it is a flat panel or a projection screen. So going into who LeGrande is, LeGrande, if you guys go onto Google and you search LeGrande, they are a very large organization that has a number of different solutions, from AV to shades and lighting controls and hospitality type solutions. So we have a wide range of solutions, but LeGrande AV is specifically where we fit and specifically where I kind of reside. So we're the global leader in electrical data and AV solutions. We are the most comprehensive AV solutions spot. So we're going to talk about a few things today of, hey, here's something that may fit this technology or this trend that we're talking about. But when you look at the overall LeGrande AV side of things, we're going to have a number of different, from the cabling, from the display, mounts to power solutions and whatnot. So that's LeGrande. We'll kind of go in. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to interrupt. I'm more than happy to help. Alrighty. Again, these are our brands below. If you guys have a chance to see them, if you recognize any of them, most commonly in the education space, we're going to be known for Chief, Daylight, and C2G. Those are going to be the three that you would typically see more often than not. So then diving into the presentation a little bit. I'm having a little bit of trouble controlling this, so I apologize, guys. All right, so again, just for the agenda today, recommended equations for properly sizing a classroom. So again, we get this a lot, and you'll hear me say it an awful lot today, is that furthest student, we want to make sure that they're able to see the content, whether it's on a projection screen or whether it's on a display. We don't care what technology you use, we just want to make sure that furthest student is able to see the content, see the difference between an 8 and a 3 or a 9 and a 0. As you guys know, I'm sure you guys have been in situations where you're squinting and you're like, hey, is that an 8 or is that a 3? And we really want to make sure that we follow those proper equations that Avixa has set up for us to use. So we'll show some examples. We'll also do some best practices to follow. So a few things that when we go into an education space, we say, oh yeah, screen height doesn't always equal ceiling height. So that's one thing that we'll talk about. We'll talk about those solutions that we have, and then ADA and compliancy for the Americans with Disabilities Act is becoming increasingly important in those education spaces. And I'm sure a lot of you guys have had instances where you've been asked about it, or it's been brought up, and it's kind of this gray area where not a lot of information has historically been shared around it. So I'll give you a few things that kind of change the classroom side of things on our side, and then we can talk about that a little bit more if you would like. So first and foremost, the rules for a room size, typically we would say room depth divided by 2 equals your screen diagonal. So this is a really quick way to sit there in a classroom and say, okay, my classroom is 15 feet deep, divide that by 2, there's your automatic screen diagonal. We'll get into in a little bit, kind of going over a few things that do play an effect on that equation, and some options for it, because obviously we know if I'm showing you this PowerPoint presentation, it's not the same as if I'm in 8th grade calculus and I'm showing you a math equation. The font sizes will be different, so it is very detailed. But for a general rule of thumb, from a good starting point, this is where you would start. It's a good way to know, hey, yeah, my 75 or 85-inch display is right on, it's perfect, that's what I need. Or, wow, that is a little bit too small, maybe I need to go up to either a larger flat panel or a projection screen, just to make sure that furthest viewer can see it. So I have some examples here of those room depths. So obviously I don't want to go into a math class with you guys, but just some examples to show you guys, hey, this is, if this room depth is a 15 or 20 foot, typically in those instances where historically we've been able to get away with a flat panel or an interactive display in some instances, depending on the content, potentially we need to look at going a little bit larger into a projection screen so that furthest viewer can see the content. Again, the last thing we want is a student to say that they're not doing well in school because they haven't been able to see that content. So again, I mentioned the room depth divided by 2 is that good base starting point. But kind of to take that one step further, obviously we know that, like I said, this presentation is not going to be the same as 8th grade calculus up on the whiteboard or display in a classroom. So this is where we get into a little bit of variations. The way that AVIXA has set up their standards is they have general viewing, detailed viewing, and inspection viewing. So detailed viewing would be something like this, where I'm giving you a PowerPoint presentation. It's going to a larger group of people. It's going to be larger text sizes, what have you. Detailed viewing is going to be those math equations, those Excel documents. We always talk about, you know, even in a class or education standpoint, if that board director can't see the accurate numbers on an Excel spreadsheet, we want to make sure that they can, so that display or projection screen is the right size. And then inspection viewing, because things get a lot more finite and more detailed at certain times, whether it's a line drawing, this could go into when you get into some of the high school grades or even higher education classes where you're looking at line drawings for an architecture class or you know, medical drawings for different type of classes. So those are kind of things where if it is smaller, we want to make sure that the projection screen or the display is also larger, so that those details do come out, that your further students can still see that. So going into the next slide. It was working just fine. All right, it's not, oh, there we go. Oh, so there's just a few examples, again, of what those look like. I'm more than happy to share this presentation with you. I don't think there's any concerns on the Truxel CDI side to pass this along to you. But we've always talked about if you're in a gymatorium where they're going to put up a large projection screen, typically those are going to be movies. You can get away with that general viewing. For those detailed viewings, and I actually did a, on the inspection viewing side, the equation that you'll see there is we, as a projection screen company, we understand that it doesn't always make sense to go with a projection screen. So based off of what you're looking at here and off the equations that AVIXA has set, we are able to say, okay, well, this needs to be a 77-inch diagonal, whatever. So if you say, hey, I want to do a projection screen and I love projection screens, that's great. But we also know that obviously you have to have a projector and you have to have the projection screen with it. It's a two-piece system. It might make more sense financially to go with a display at that point. And we just want to make sure you guys have the right size. We don't care what technology you use. One thing I will mention that we have, and again, you guys would like this, if I go back one slide, you'll see this image sizing tool. Daylight has developed this booklet. It's a spiral bound booklet. It's very analog. It doesn't have a lot of technology to it, but as you go through it, the font size will change. And on the back of each sheet, it will tell you, hey, in this room, because the furthest person standing away of where they'll be sitting, in this room, I need a 106-inch display, or I need an 85-inch display, or whatever that might be. If you guys are interested in this, please reach out. I am more than happy to send you a copy of this image sizing tool because it's a really great visual. I can do math all day long, and I'm sure some of you guys might be teaching math, but it's a really good visual tool to say, oh my gosh, yes, I thought an 85 was really big. It looks like, it sounds like a big display, but it's not going to be big enough for the room. So if you guys are interested, please let us know. I can make sure you have my email address, or Truxel CDI can connect with me and we can send those out to you guys so you have that really great tool. My apologies, guys. It's not moving again. Okay. So then looking at the best practices, like I said, with projection screens is ceiling height does not always equal screen height. So one of the things that we always look at is, hey, Steph, I need a 9-foot projection screen. Okay, cool. How tall is your ceiling? It's 10 feet. So the challenge there is, as the screen comes down, we just want to make sure that any students or tables or chairs that are there, it kind of floats above those tables and chairs. So typically, we would say 48 inches above the finished floor is where we would recommend that screen height to come down. So then you go back to, hey, well, you just told me my screen height needed to be 60 inches, and now that's going to be more than the 48, or it's going to be less than the 48. What do I do? So we understand that there are a lot of challenges within room environments to make sure that your technology kind of meets all the standards, it meets the needs for the kids, and it meets your needs as an education provider. So that's one thing that we do recognize. We are happy to help. I know Truxel CDI is more than happy to help. Get us involved, let us know what we can do in these instances where it might be a little bit different. So then just a quick plug before we go into additional technology information is, when you do go into these spaces, we understand that there's obviously those interactive flat panels, which have become extremely popular because you have the ability to have the teacher interact. You have the student that can also be engaged in this. You know, it quick swipe, quick, you know, move on to the next thing is really easy. So we understand that those interactive flat panels are great. The challenge at times is that they are limited in size, more so than not. So, you know, you can go up to an 85, maybe 90 inch, but after that, you're a little bit limited. But we know that those students in a 25-foot deep room need a little bit larger. So Daylight does have a solution that is an interactive whiteboard. First and foremost, it's going to be a projection solution, but it does have the ability to pair with an interactive projector and give you the same flexibility that potentially a flat panel might. The other part of that is that when using projection, we preach day in and day out as a projection screen manufacturer about uniformity. And I'm sure you guys have all been in classrooms where you shine a projector on a whiteboard or a surface and you have this big old hot spot, or you have this big old glare, or it's been in an environment where it's, you know, you wrote on the whiteboard, you put up there that homework is due October 3rd. It was up there for 3 weeks, and now you try to clean it and it doesn't come clean. All of those experiences provide very poor uniformity from a projection screen standpoint. So sizing obviously is one portion of that, but the uniformity of a projection screen is where we really want to focus on making sure that it's a clean solution. It's, you know, it's going to be clean every single time. You're going to have the same brightness from edge to edge, corner to corner, as you do with some other solutions. So our idea screen is a solution that it doesn't hotspot, it doesn't glare. You're not going to have any problems with erasability, but it is going to be that projection surface, and it is going to be that interactive surface if paired with an interactive projector that you have historically used. So then again, and again, if there's any questions, please let me know. Shifting just a little bit, because from our side of things, as Legrand AV, we have a number of different brands. So tying everything together, we're looking at the classroom and how to make the classroom better for the students, and for the instructors to make sure that we are meeting everybody's needs. One of those things is making AV technology ADA compliant. So if you guys aren't familiar with ADA compliancy, it is a standard that we have. It stands for the Americans with Disability Act. It's aimed at preventing discrimination against people with mental or physical disabilities. It's not just applicable for ramps and doorways, but also AV solutions. So this is where historically everybody said, oh, I have the ramp, you know, I have the handicap parking spot, I have lower sinks in the bathroom, I'm good. So it's been applied to technology as well. And one of the things that we really focus on, and I will encourage you guys, if you are interested, we have an ebook that goes into making AV technology ADA compliant. It's a number of pages. It has a really good information from cabling and how to lay it over the floor, or how to get that to range reaches, or you know, being able to interact with different solutions. So if you guys are interested in that, we're also more than happy to share it. It has a lot of information on it, but it really helps. And it's not just applicable to our solutions, it's really applicable to the whole environment. But today we're going to specifically focus on range reaches. So this refers to how easy it is for someone in a wheelchair to reach or control an AV device. So you can see here that we have a couple standards: no lower than 15 feet off the ground, and then no higher than 48 inches off the ground. So if there's a concern with trying to navigate an interactive display that's static on the wall, it's 36 inches above the floor, but the top of that is not going to be ADA accessible to a person in a wheelchair that may have some difficulty getting to the top of that display. And then no more than 10 inches wide off of the wall. So making sure that if something is coming off of the wall, that they can still interact over top of that with an interactive display if there's a credenza or something in front of that. How does this apply to Chief? So Chief has a full line of, if you guys are familiar with Chief, we are the leading manufacturer of mounting solutions. That includes projector mounts, display mounts, carts, what have you. But really trying to focus on these areas where we historically haven't had a big presence. Over the last few years, we've gained more as ADA compliancy has been much more needed in certain environments. So from cart stands, just wall mounted solutions, making sure that the solutions that you have in the classroom will be ADA compliant. So again, just going into one little plug here is a cart that works well, is height adjustable, so it will travel. All the solutions you saw on the previous slide also do the same, but making sure that, one, you're not going to have any issues with a wheelchair getting up too close to the display, that you're not going to have any concern with if it's motorized and it's coming down and it's going to stop if it hits anything. That can include a pen, it can include some fingers, it will include a child's head, whatever that might be. So we want to make sure that all of the solutions protect you and the students in those specific applications. Oh. Are there any questions? I talked really fast.
Well, thank you, Stephanie, for that. Yes, if there are any questions, please feel free to put it in the chat box or in the Q&A. Someone did mention, I know Stephanie was saying it throughout the presentation today too, that if you would like to copy the presentation, we are actually going to be sending a recording of this webinar to everyone, and then we can also send out the presentation as well if needed. As well, Stephanie is always available. We can also connect you to our Truxel CDI rep.
I think there's a hand raised. I don't know. Is it Cassie?
Cassie, yes, if you have a question, I'm not sure if we can unmute it just with our settings, but if you can type in your question, if you do have one in the chat box, that would be great, or within the Q&A.
Okay, I think I was able to unmute.
Oh.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Perfect.
Okay. My question was, I was hoping maybe there'd be a little more explanation on choosing whether it's best to go with a projector screen versus a display screen beyond just the size. Is there any other input? We're looking at building a new elementary school, so we're trying to figure out, you know, in our high school and our middle schools, we have interactive projectors. But we're hoping to maybe get a little bit better insight if we should, you know, continue down the interactive projector route, or if we should be looking at other options.
So it's interesting because I've been with Daylight in LeGrande for about 6 years, and for 4 of those years, I was very focused on the Daylight. So for those 4 years, I would have said yes, do projection screens, because it obviously it was my brand. But at the end of the day, we really just want to make sure that the size is correct. So when it comes in projector technology has gotten a lot better than it was 6 years ago, where you have better lasers, you have more brightness. So in some areas where historically projection would have looked dim, obviously in classrooms you have the fluorescent lighting, and it you know it kind of washes out the projection screen. We had a lot of people go to a flat panel or an interactive display because they said, hey, the brightness is better. Well, projection technology now, and again, I don't sell projectors whatsoever, is a lot better in some senses, where it's brighter, and it's, you know, you don't have to change out the lamp, so the cost of ownership is a lot lower than it used to be. So it really is kind of a toss-up. If you can get away with going towards flat panels or interactive flat panels, you know, that might be the way to go. But again, we really want to make sure that that furthest student can see it. So if your classroom is more than 18 to 20 feet, I would say at that point, it's a good idea to start looking at projection.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. It's really a toss-up, but like I said, 6 years ago, when the brightness wasn't all there, and it did look, I guess the word that I heard a lot was dingy, and washed out. So now that those are brighter, now that you have better screen surfaces, whether it's for different environments, it does boost up that brightness of the projection system itself, to kind of match what the output of the display could do.
So at this point, if you say like projection is the way to go, do most people, like in a school setting, just project right onto their whiteboard, or
Yes.
what do you see? For an interactive projector, you have to have like that solid surface.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So in a classroom setting, we have, on the Daylight side, anywhere from manual pull-down screens to, you know, $3,000 screens. And we understand in a classroom environment, with budgets, that sometimes that's not realistic. More than often, it's not realistic. So, I mean, we see people projecting on some of their current whiteboards today. But again, that's where I mentioned about where we preach uniformity day in and day out. If your standard whiteboard is something you want to project onto, and it doesn't have hot spots and it comes clean every single time, then by all means, that's great. But we see a lot of times is those whiteboards aren't meant for projection. So they do have a hot spot, which causes uniformity issues and challenges with the student seeing the content. And then they don't come clean every single time. So like I said, the example of writing October 3rd homework due, it's up there for 3 weeks. You go to erase it and you can still faintly see it, but then you're trying to project on there and you have kind of that ghosting time after time. And that's where we have a little bit of challenges. So that's why I say if you're going to use projection, Idea Screen would be a really good source, or even some, you know, electric screen, or a few different options that we have.
Okay, and then I know you had the, I'm sorry, I'm asking a lot of questions.
Oh, no.
But I know you had talked about the height for boards as far as being accessible for all, but do you have any other formulas or resources to provide as far as, you know, age of people interacting with displays? You know, because a preschool student is not going to have the same needs as a 12th grader.
Right. I don't know if our, I don't know if we have that. That's actually a really good feedback.
We on the Truxel CDI side.
I can tell you, I've always had this. When my counterpart, when I was working in the Midwest, was 6'4", and I am 5 feet tall. So we always kind of joked about, you know, the same height for him is not the same height for me. So I absolutely understand what you're saying, and I don't think we have anything, and that's actually really good feedback that I'm making a note about. Thank you.
I believe on our Truxel CDI side, we do have, we are able to provide something like that too. I think we do have something on our side that we can share as well. If you reach out to your account executive, then we can get that information.
Okay, thanks.
And then we do have a question here, Stephanie, that came in through the Q&A. Has video walls come down enough in price to be a reasonable solution in K-12?
Personally, from what I'm seeing, the answer would be no. Obviously, I just am able to supply the mounting solutions, which are very reasonable in price. And it all depends on the display that you're adding to those. You guys could probably tell me a lot better than I could guess about kind of what the, you know, average display allowance would be for a standard classroom. We've got into a lot of instances in classrooms where we've specified, or a consultant or the school district has specified a solution to go in there. Hey, it's going to be a $2,000 projection screen. And that's the first thing that gets kind of value engineered down a little bit to a lesser, or a more cost-effective projection system. So from a video wall standpoint, you typically look at, you know, that's at least 4 displays. I don't think they've come down in cost that much to make it as reasonable or financially acceptable for a K-12 classroom.
Okay, great. Al, I hope that answered your question. Are there any other questions that we have so far? Just, we have the chat open and the Q&A open. Okay, I think that is everything. So Stephanie, thank you so much for joining us today and providing a lot of in-depth information and answering questions. And thank you to all of our participants that are on the webinar as well. As I mentioned earlier, we will definitely be sending out a recording of this for you to have, and consent of the presentation as well. We will share our contact information too for you to have, and we do please recommend reaching out either to your Truxel CDI account manager that you work with, or to Stephanie directly, and we can follow up with any questions you may think of later. So again, thank you so much, and we hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you, guys.